Hello, my name is Owly. Today's story topic is dyslexia and dyscalculia from a neuroscience perspective. Let's get into it. In this video, I am going to talk about these things. First, what are dyslexia and dyscalculia, including what is happening inside the brain. Second, what do they have in common between these two? Third, how can we support children with dyslexia and dyscalculia? You thought, I'm not a neuroscientist. No worries, I will explain step by step so you can understand more deeply. Let's start by understanding what dyslexia and dyscalculia are. Dyslexia is a learning feature that leads to slowness in reading, sometimes also writing. Besides, comprehension while reading is also very affected, as well as memory abilities. In its turn, dyscalculia is also a learning feature that affects memory, mathematical ability, and making sense of numbers and other related symbols. Those two together make the multiplication table a particular learning challenge for children diagnosed with dyscalculia. Aside from that, kids affected by dyscalculia also struggle when trying to understand and perform simple calculations, as well as comprehending time, which leads to difficulties when reading the clock and interpreting schedules. Now it is the time to investigate a little bit deeper in order to understand how those difficulties are explained in brain research. Beginning with dyslexia, for some time, researchers believed reading skills were associated with visual areas in the brain, but what the recent studies point out is actually that a network of left hemisphere regions is responsible for reading capability. This means that phonological processing plays a very relevant part, and that is still true even for deaf children. From this perspective, children with dyslexia present low neuronal activity in those areas marked with different colors in the picture. The temporoparietal cortex, marked in blue, is the one responsible for phonological processing, and it is especially important during the early development of reading, as this skill is strongly based on the neural structures for spoken language. As reading skills advance, the occipitotemporal cortex, marked in light green, is progressively more demanded and kids with dyslexia show once more neuronal underactivation. This area of the brain is actually visual in nature and is also known as visual word form area. This means this region is specialized in visual processing of words or printed symbols, as a representation of sounds. In that sense, it is not the same as the interpretation of other visual elements, such as objects and faces. The area marked in yellow is called as inferior frontal cortex, and it is very important for complex linguistic tasks, like processing meanings, silent reading, and speech planning. Surprisingly, children affected by dyslexia show a rather increased engagement of this brain area, and research has shown that this may be due to compensatory processes that rely on subvocal reading or on the children's increased effort. Besides all of that, some other regions beyond those reading areas of the brain may show low neuronal activation in some children with dyslexia. Those are presented in this second image. The primary visual and auditory cortices, highlighted in salmon and purple, are responsible for processing rapid visual information, including motion. The cerebellum, marked in dark green, works in connection with areas responsible for phonological processing, verbal working memory, and meanings understanding. Neuronal differences within the cerebellum may be associated with struggles in timing functions, fluency, and even motor difficulties sometimes reported in certain dyslexia subtypes. What about dyscalculia? Well, things are a little more complicated. Research has not been conclusive about the brain areas demanded by mathematical reasoning, and it seems the brain's functioning changes quite a bit through age. However, some very interesting findings can be presented. One of them is that brain regions, such as the parietal lobe, responsible for hand movements, are also especially relevant for arithmetic reasoning, number magnitude processing, and enumeration, mainly in young brains. That points out the relation between finger movement and further ability to count and operate mathematically. The development of those skills then starts more concretely and evolves in time for more abstract functions. Related to this, in the image, we can see two important brain areas in green: the interparietal sulcus and the posterior parietal cortex. Besides, neighboring regions may be activated as well, in order to mediate calculation. The most interesting aspect is that they border those responsible for grasping, such as the precentral and postcentral gyrus, here highlighted in pink. This phenomenon is observed strongly in children, demonstrating once more that they rely more often on concrete forms of counting and their brains are sometimes calling for hand movement as a support. We can understand dyscalculia as a neuronal underactivation of one or more specific areas within this complex network of brain regions. In addition, transmission of information between areas is often not smooth. Until now, we've been discussing neuroscientific features of dyslexia and dyscalculia. But from now on, I will explain the commonality between the two. Recent brain research is uncovering some intriguing overlaps. In one study, scientists watched the brain activity of children with dyslexia, dyscalculia, both, and those without any features. They are given arithmetic tasks, where they had to subtract the smaller number below from the larger number above. Behavior-wise, children with dyscalculia showed lower accuracy when subtracting dot arrays. But what about inside those brains? The brain activity with dyslexia or dyscalculia has a lot of similarities. Analyses pointed towards substantial neural similarity in activation levels in frontal and parietal areas between children with learning difficulties. What is important here is that this was shown regardless of the type. This shakes up the old school thinking that dyslexia is just about words, and dyscalculia is just about numbers. Although this has not been widely emphasized, interventions effective for dyslexia may also prove effective for dyscalculia and vice versa. Then, how can we support children exactly? Well, there are some studies for this question. Nathan H. Clemens et al. Have very recently published their study on whether adding spelling practice to decoding instruction improves word reading skills. For this study, 68 students with significant word reading difficulties in grades 2 through 4 were assigned to one of two intervention conditions in which decoding instruction and practice were identical. But in one condition, students also practiced spelling the words with feedback. Statistically significant improvements were observed in the decoding plus spelling group for silent word recognition efficiency and handwriting fluency. Results suggest that spelling practice may enhance word reading skills. Another study describes the Literacy First program, a community-based reading intervention in Texas schools. Intervention students showed significant improvements in reading skills. The program was particularly effective for students with lower initial reading skills and those receiving special education services. Furthermore, a study at Helsinki University has analyzed a specially designed Cyrillic font, Lexia D, and its abilities to assist dyslexic adolescents and enhance their skills. For dyscalculia, one study in 2013 already suggested computerized training tools to improve numerical magnitude processing. But this method limited success in generalizing improvements to broader arithmetic skills. Second, more recently, multiple tools have been tested to be efficient, such as Dyscalcu, Mathlet, and others. Also, Stefan and Gerd analyzed data from several studies conducted with school-age children and adolescents in 1 to 7 grades. They concluded that symptom-specific interventions in which people get tasks to practice are more effective than general exercises for short-term memory. They also highlight that treatment should be provided by people with appropriate pedagogical therapeutic training. In addition, they think there should be a standardized test for diagnosing dyscalculia, and comorbid symptoms such as dyslexia should be kept in mind. They mention that in Germany, children with dyscalculia do not receive equal treatment as children with dyslexia. Finally, there is a study on the comprehension of arithmetic words. They emphasized the importance of paying special attention to a higher level of mathematics with comprehension of the arithmetic words. So, what are the strengths of children with dyslexia and dyscalculia, you ask? Well, aside from creativity and problem-solving, as often highlighted, a new study reveals may have previously unheralded strengths, namely reduced bias against others based on characteristics such as their disability, race, or gender. Researchers are still piecing together this puzzle. Jennifer Aniston is among the well-known individuals with dyslexia. She once said, "Once you figure out who you are and what you love about yourself, I think it all kind of falls into place." It's all about the importance of children being able to understand their own characteristics, including their strengths and weaknesses, and of the environment around them accepting these differences and supporting children's self-esteem. Today's explanation is based on these scientific articles. If you are more interested, you can jump to it from the link. Just to let you know, in this video, AI was used to generate the voice for the lines we wrote. This is the end of the video. I hope you gained some useful insights. Thank you for watching. Bye bye.